I'm Jake Miller, and this story begins when Linda Harper thought she could block my driveway without permission, only to learn a lesson the hard way. She figured she could just park her truck in front of my house for a bit to see how I'd react, and when I realized what was happening, I made sure she paid a steep price. The result? She had to stand in front of the authorities, stammering through her explanation. And I can tell you, that scene wasn't pleasant at all. Living in a neighborhood like Pinewood Estates has always been my dream, and as the fire chief of the Salem Fire Department, I've spent my whole life facing fires. Now I just wanted a peaceful place to rest on my days off. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video. I still remember the feeling of stepping outside, ready to check on my vintage fire truck, a 1980 Ford F550. My pride and joy, only to see it blocked behind her truck's barricade. I made her face the police and the fire crew. And trust me, she wasn't thrilled about having to explain her actions. I've led fire crews through massive blazes, pulled people out of thick smoke and shouted orders over blaring sirens. I wanted a place to relax on my off days, somewhere I could forget the smell of smoke and the sound of alarms. So I bought a house in Pinewood Estates, a fancy suburb not far from Salem, with white-walled homes, stone-paved walkways, and neatly trimmed oak trees. I had a wide driveway stretching from the garage to the main road, where I parked my vintage fire truck, a bright red machine, fully equipped, perfect for me to tinker with on weekends. It was my pride and joy, the thing I loved most after long days on the job. But the problem with Pinewood Estates was people like Linda Harper, the kind who think they own everything. Ever since she showed up, she wouldn't stop complaining about things that were none of her business. First, she said my fire truck didn't fit the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Then she started saying I shouldn't have privileges just because I had a spacious driveway. Clearly she was mad because she didn't have anything like it. I ignored her at first. I dealt with all sorts of stubborn folks in my line of work, from panicked people in burning buildings, to drunks blocking the fire truck's path. And I knew the best way to handle someone like Linda was to pay her no mind. But the trouble with people like her is that when you don't react, they push things even further. My house sat in a gated section, with a driveway wide enough for my Ford F550 to stand solid without blocking anyone. I loved how it looked there, bright red gleaming, like a reminder of the days I rushed into flames to save lives. I'd often step outside, pop the hood, check the engine, or just sit in the cab listening to the old crackling radio. That's where I found peace. But Linda Harper didn't see it that way. To her, my truck was an eyesore, and my driveway was something she wanted to control. I never expected she'd act on it, blocking it without even asking. And that was the start of the trouble I'll tell you about next. The first time I met Linda in person was one afternoon, while I was wiping down the chrome on my Ford F550. I heard the clack of high heels on the stone walkway, and when I looked up, there she was, about 50, with dyed blonde hair, hands on her hips like she was about to read me the riot act. "Do you know how awful this truck looks?" she said, her tone like I'd just parked a pile of trash out front. I shrugged and replied, "I think it's beautiful. It's a fire truck, not a garbage heap." She smirked, obviously unhappy with my answer, then turned and walked off without another word. I figured that was the end of it, a random complaint from someone with too much time on her hands. But Linda wasn't idle. She was the type who'd turn anything into a big deal if she didn't get attention. A few days later I got a letter from the HOA, printed on official logo paper, asking me to reconsider parking the fire truck in the driveway, because it didn't match Pinewood Estates' aesthetics. I read it, smirked, and shoved it in a drawer. I knew exactly who was behind it. Linda didn't just complain to me, she dragged the HOA into it to put pressure on me. I heard from Mr. Harrison that she was an active member of the association, always showing up at meetings with a long list of things she wanted to improve. For Linda, improving meant controlling. Then she started spreading rumors. One evening, while I was having a beer with Mr. Harrison on his porch, he said, "Linda's been telling folks around here you're a fire hazard. She says that truck could blow up any minute." I laughed, nearly choking on my beer. "Blow up? It's a fire truck, not a bomb." Mr. Harrison shrugged and said, "I know, but people believe her. She's got a way of convincing folks." I shook my head, thinking Linda must really have nothing better to do than make up stuff like that. But I stayed calm. I'd handled all kinds of people in my job, from screamers in burning buildings to drunks trying to punch me as I pulled them from wrecks. So I knew the best thing was to ignore her nonsense. But Linda didn't stop. She started saying I shouldn't have privileges, just because I had a big driveway and a fire truck. I heard it from another neighbor who stopped by to ask about the truck. "Linda says you're getting too many favors," he said, sounding a bit awkward. "Favors?" I shot back. "I bought this house. The driveway's mine. The truck's mine. What's she want?" Me to ask her permission to live here. He laughed, but I didn't. Clearly, Linda was jealous, maybe because her house didn't have a driveway like mine, or because she didn't have anything as cool as my Ford F550. I told you, the problem with people like Linda is they don't stop when you don't react. They push the boundaries further, and that's exactly what happened. After all the complaints, HOA letters and dumb rumors about my vintage fire truck, Linda decided to up her game. I never thought she'd actually do something, but one morning, she did. She blocked my driveway for the first time, and I started to realize ignoring her wasn't an option anymore. It was a regular weekend day. I woke up early, brewed a cup of coffee, and stepped outside to check the engine on my Ford F550. I loved mornings like that. No sirens, no smoke, just me and my beloved fire truck. But when I opened the front door, I felt a chill down my spine. That feeling you get when you know something's wrong. I looked out at the driveway, and my heart skipped a beat. Linda's beat-up old truck, a rusty gray heap, was parked sideways across my path, blocking the whole way in and out. No note, no explanation, nothing. Just that truck sitting there like a challenge. I stood still for a moment, blinking, trying to figure out what was going on. My first thought was maybe someone parked it by mistake. Pinewood Estates is full of rich folks with all kinds of cars, and sometimes they park carelessly. But then I looked closer. It was Linda's truck. I recognized the busted side mirror I'd seen in front of her house, a few doors down. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. I walked over, checked around, wheels locked, no keys, no Linda. She'd parked it there, and walked off, like my driveway was her personal parking lot. Adrenaline started pumping through me. I'm a fire chief. I've faced burning houses, smoking wrecks and panicked people running back into flames. But standing in front of my own driveway, blocked by a rusty truck from an arrogant neighbor, I felt a different kind of anger. This wasn't an emergency, not life or death, but a blatant insult. I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay calm. I'd handled all sorts of situations on the job, and I knew the best way to deal with Linda was not to let her see me lose it. I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and called Linda. It rang a few times before she picked up, her fake sweet voice coming through. "Hello, who's this?" I didn't beat around the bush. "Linda, your truck's blocking my driveway. Move it now." There was a pause. Then she laughed. That smug chuckle I could picture clear as day. "Oh, I'm fixing up my house," she said, like it was the most legit excuse ever. "I just parked it there for a bit. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I gritted my teeth. "Fixing your house doesn't mean you can block my way. Move it now, or I'll handle it myself." She laughed again, then hung up before I could say more. I gripped the phone tight, trying to process what just happened. This wasn't a mix-up. It was a declaration of war. Linda wasn't just complaining or spreading rumors anymore. She'd crossed a line, messed with my property, and had the nerve to laugh in my face. I looked at her truck, then at my Ford F550 trapped behind it, and anger surged. But I didn't panic. I'm a fire chief. I know how to handle a crisis, whether it's a fire or a dumb neighbor. I asked myself, who does she think she is to pull this? After that first time Linda Harper blocked my driveway, I figured she'd back off, at least for a while, after I threatened to deal with her truck myself. But I underestimated how arrogant she was. Linda didn't just come back. She stepped up her game, and this time I started suspecting it wasn't random anymore. When I found my driveway blocked a second time, I knew for sure she was trying to provoke me, and I'd find the proof to back it up. It happened one morning a few days after the truck incident. I woke up early, as usual, planning to check the tires on my Ford F550. I like keeping it in perfect shape, even if it's just sitting in the driveway. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and instantly felt that chill down my spine again, the same feeling I'd had before. I looked out at the driveway, and my heart sank. My fire truck was still there, but in front of it was a temporary metal fence, about 3 feet high, with a little sign that read "Restricted Area. No entry." No truck this time. Linda had switched tactics, and she clearly wanted to make a point. I stood still for a moment, blinking, trying to process what I was seeing. My first thought was that maybe the HOA had done this. Pinewood Estates is full of weird rules, and I'd heard they sometimes put up barriers for road repairs, or sewer checks. But then I looked closer. The fence didn't have an HOA logo, no signs of a maintenance crew. It looked cheap, makeshift, like something someone grabbed from a hardware store and slapped together. I stepped closer, inspecting it more carefully, and noticed a detail. The ties holding the fence were new, but there were a few streaks of red paint on them, the exact red matching the paint on Linda's truck I'd seen before. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. And I started feeling the adrenaline kick in. I didn't panic. I'm a fire chief. I've dealt with situations way worse than this. I've stood in the middle of burning buildings, guided my crew through thick smoke, and stayed calm when everything was falling apart. But this time was different. This wasn't a fire or an accident. It was a personal attack, and it made me angry in a way I didn't expect. I asked myself, who's dumb enough to block a fire chief's driveway not once but twice? I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and checked the security camera I'd installed after the truck incident. I wasn't letting Linda get away with this again without proof. I rewound the footage from the night before. Sure enough, just as I suspected. Around midnight, the camera caught Linda, unmistakable with her dyed blonde hair and smug walk, dragging the fence from her truck and setting it up in front of my driveway. She worked alone, glancing around now and then like she was scared of getting caught, then stuck the restricted area sign on before walking off. I paused the video, sat down on the couch, and let the truth sink in. Linda didn't just block my driveway. She did it sneakily, like a thief in the night. I let out a dry laugh, but inside, I wasn't amused at all. This wasn't a joke anymore. It was a blatant challenge. I was about to call Linda to confront her when Mr. Harrison knocked on my door. He stepped inside, holding a coffee mug, and said right away, "Jake, I thought you let Linda borrow your driveway or something. I saw her putting up that fence in front of your place last night." I cut him off. "Borrow? How do you figure that when she snuck out and did it at midnight?" Mr. Harrison shrugged and replied, "I'm just saying what I saw. She's a thorn in everyone's side around here. That gray house a few doors down from you." I nodded, the initial shock turning into anger. "She didn't borrow anything," I said, my voice lowering. "She's playing a stupid game, and I'm going to make her regret it." By this point, I knew I couldn't let Linda Harper keep acting like my driveway was her personal playground. After finding the metal fence blocking my path for the second time and watching the security footage, I had no doubts left. Linda wasn't just arrogant, she was dumb enough to think she could outsmart me. I stood in the living room, looking out the window at the flimsy fence Linda had put up. My Ford F-550 was still there, red and proud, but trapped behind that ridiculous barrier like a caged animal. Most people would probably lose it, kick the fence down, or call the cops right away. But not me. I'd learned that fire can be a lot more dangerous when you don't understand it, and people like Linda were the same. The more confident she got, the more mistakes she'd make. I asked myself, who's dumb enough to block a fire chief's driveway not once but twice? The answer was obvious. Linda Harper. I decided not to call her right away. After the last time I told her to move her truck and she laughed in my face, I knew talking to Linda directly was a waste of time. Instead, I needed to play it smarter. I stepped outside, checked the fence more closely. It wasn't sturdy, a few loose metal bars tied with plastic straps, and the restricted area sign was just a piece of cardboard with glue. I could have torn it down with my hands, but I didn't want to. Not yet. I wanted Linda to dig her hole deeper, and to do that I needed to figure out what she'd try next. I went back inside, grabbed my phone and checked the fire crew's schedule. I still kept close tabs on my team in Salem, even though I wasn't on daily shifts anymore. There hadn't been any big fires lately, but I was always ready if something came up. That's why my driveway had to stay clear. I thought about calling the crew out right then, using a neighborhood safety check as an excuse, but I held off. Linda hadn't caused real damage yet. Not yet, and I didn't want to turn this into a public fight too soon. Instead, I checked the security camera again, slowing down the video to see if I'd missed anything. Linda worked alone, no help, and she clearly didn't know I had cameras. That was my edge. I was deep into it when the doorbell rang. It was Mr. Harrison, the older neighbor who tipped me off about Linda the night before. He walked in, holding a piece of paper and said, "Jake, I just heard Linda bragging to some folks in the neighborhood that she's gonna teach you a lesson for not putting that fire truck away. She says you don't respect HOA rules." I raised an eyebrow. "Teach me a lesson? By blocking my driveway?" Mr. Harrison nodded. "Yep, she thinks you'll give up and stick it in the garage. I told her you're not the type to get pushed around, but she just laughed." I shook my head, letting out a dry laugh. "She doesn't know who she's messing with, Mr. Harrison." Right then my anger turned into cold determination. Linda wasn't just blocking my driveway, she was trying to play a power game, thinking I was some regular neighbor who'd cave under her pressure. But I'm a fire chief. I've faced situations others run from, and I wasn't about to let someone like Linda back me down. I told Mr. Harrison, "Thanks for the heads up. I'll handle this but my way." He nodded, smiling a little. "I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, Jake." After finding the fence blocking my driveway for the second time, and hearing Mr. Harrison talk about her plan to teach me a lesson, I knew Linda wouldn't quit. That night I was sitting in the living room, going over the camera footage one last time, to make sure I had enough evidence against Linda. My phone rang, a call from the Salem fire crew. I picked up, and Tom, my deputy chief, sounded urgent. Jake, we've got a big fire at the lumber mill 5 miles from Pinewood Estates. People are freaking out, and the wind's picking up. Can you come help? I shot up, adrenaline surging like the old days on shift. I'm on my way, I said, then bolted for the door, grabbing my keys and jacket. But when I stepped outside, I froze. My driveway didn't just have the metal fence anymore. Linda had parked her rusty truck right in front, blocking the whole path. The fence was still there, but the truck was locked tight, wheels jammed against the curb, leaving no gap to move my Ford F-550, or even my personal car. I ran over, checked it quick. No keys, no Linda, just that truck sitting there like a wall daring me to do something. My blood rushed to my head. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a real fire, and Linda was in my way. I pulled out my phone and called Linda right then. It rang 3 times before she answered, her sleepy voice coming through. Who's this? It's late. I yelled into the phone. Linda, you parked your truck blocking my driveway. Move it now. This is an emergency. There was a pause. Then she let out that smug laugh I'd heard before. Emergency. You're overreacting, Jake. I just parked it there for a bit. I gritted my teeth, trying to stay calm even though my heart was pounding. There's a fire happening, and I need to get out now. Move it, or I'll smash it out of the way. She laughed again, then said, don't make a fuss. I'll come by when I feel like it. Then she hung up. I stood there gripping the phone tight, anger exploding inside me like a fire I'd put out 100 times. Linda wasn't just blocking my driveway. She was obstructing an emergency, and she had the gall to laugh in my face when I told her straight. I'm a fire chief. I know fire doesn't wait, and every second could mean life or death. I didn't care if Linda came to move it or not anymore. I had to act fast. I ran back inside, grabbed the fire crew's radio, and called Tom. Tom, I'm blocked in by a truck. Send the crew to Pinewood Estates now. I need emergency help to clear it. While waiting, I stepped outside, staring at the truck and fence. I could break them myself. I've got the strength and tools in the garage, but I didn't want to do it without witnesses. Linda would turn around and sue me for wrecking her stuff, and I wasn't giving her any chance to flip this. I stood there, adrenaline pumping, wondering how someone could be dumb enough to block my driveway right when I needed it most. But then I heard sirens. The fire crew was coming, and I knew Linda was about to face consequences she never saw coming. Red lights from the fire truck lit up the neighborhood as Tom's crew rolled up to my house. I stepped out to the driveway, pointing at Linda's truck and metal fence. We've got a big fire at the lumber mill, I said to Tom over the radio, but I can't get out because of this mess. Tom, a tall guy with a grin always ready, jumped down from the patrol truck, looked at the scene and laughed. You mean your neighbor blocked your driveway during this? Unbelievable. I nodded, saying, welcome to Pinewood Estates, Tom. Now break it down. We don't have time. My crew got to work fast. 2 firefighters brought out a metal cutter to take down the fence, while Tom and another guy used the patrol truck to shove Linda's truck aside. The sound of metal clashing and engines roaring echoed through the quiet neighborhood. I stood there, arms crossed, watching my team work with the efficiency I'd trained them for years to have. The fence collapsed in under 2 minutes, and the truck got pushed to the curb like a toy. My driveway was clear again, and I knew Linda couldn't dodge this anymore. Right then, Linda showed up. She ran out from her house a few doors down, still in her bathrobe, hair a mess, yelling, "What are you doing to my truck?" I turned, locked eyes with her, and said in a calm but sharp voice, "This is the Salem Fire Department. You're obstructing an emergency run. Now step aside." Linda's face went pale as she saw the fire truck, sirens, and my crew in full gear. She stammered, I didn't know you were a fire chief. I just parked it there." I smirked, stepping closer. "Didn't know? You laughed in my face when I said it was an emergency. Well, you know now." Linda stood there, hands shaking, scrambling for excuses. "I didn't mean to," she shouted, her voice shrill. "I just wanted you to put that fire truck away." Tom, next to me, couldn't hold it in, and laughed loud over the radio. "She blocked your driveway over that truck. That's a brilliant reason." I glanced at Tom, signaling him to hush, then turned back to Linda. "You wanted me to put it away. Fine, but now my crew's here, and you'll have to explain to the cops why you held us up." Just then a police patrol car pulled up. I'd called them over the radio when the crew arrived, and 2 officers stepped out, looking at Linda with zero sympathy. She panicked, rushing toward her truck like she could drag it away herself. "Wait, you can't do this," she screamed. I'm an HOA member. I have rights. I stepped up, switching on the radio speaker so the crew and cops could hear. You've got a truck and a fence blocking a driveway that's not yours, while I needed to get out to handle a fire. Know what that's called in the law? Linda looked up, eyes wide but didn't answer. I went on, obstructing an emergency. A serious charge. She blinked fast, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, clearly not expecting things to go this far. I could see Linda's usual arrogance melt away right there. She wasn't the smug woman laughing over the phone anymore. She was a frantic mess, standing in my driveway surrounded by the fire crew and police. I didn't laugh though I wanted to. I kept my voice stern like when I give orders in a big fire. You put yourself in this spot, Linda, I said. Now step aside and let us work. The cops moved in, starting to question her, while I climbed into the patrol truck with Tom. Let's go, I said. We've got a fire to put out. As the fire truck rolled out, I glanced in the rear view and saw Linda standing there, face white, hands clutching her head. I didn't care about her anymore. I had bigger things to deal with. My crew got to the lumber mill in time, put out the fire after a tense few hours, and no one got hurt. When I got back from the lumber mill fire, Linda was still there, trying to justify her actions like she was the victim in all this. But I was done with her excuses. I'd given her enough chances, and now it was time for the immediate consequences to hit. Linda had started this fight, and I'd make sure she couldn't turn it around on me. I drove the patrol truck back to Pinewood Estates after putting out the fire, tired but glad no one was hurt. As I turned onto my street, I saw Linda standing in front of my driveway, hands on hips, face flushed like she'd been waiting to argue with me. Her truck had been towed to the curb by the police. The metal fence lay scattered on the grass, and a few neighbors, including Mr. Harrison, were watching from a distance. I parked, stepped out, and Linda charged at me right away, yelling, "You had no right to wreck my truck like that. This is my property." I looked at her, keeping my voice calm but cutting. "Your property? Funny. Usually when someone borrows something, they don't lock it in front of another person's driveway during a fire." Linda blinked, her mouth opening and shutting, clearly not expecting me to hit back like that. She stepped closer, voice shaky but still trying to sound confident. "I didn't know it was an emergency. I just parked it there for a bit. You can't sue me for this." I let out a dry laugh, turning to Tom. He was still by the patrol truck, holding back a grin. "Hear that, Tom?" I said over my shoulder. She didn't know it was an emergency. Even though I yelled over the phone about a fire, Tom couldn't hold it anymore, and burst out laughing. Blocking a fire chief's driveway during a fire, and saying she didn't know. She's winning the comedy award this year. Linda spun toward Tom, her face redder, shouting, "I'm an HOA member. I have the right to protect this neighborhood." I stepped in, cutting her off. "Protect the neighborhood by stopping me from putting out a fire. You almost delayed my whole crew, Linda. You didn't protect anything. You put us at risk." She went quiet for a second, then switched tactics, her voice softer. "I just wanted you to get rid of that fire truck. It makes the neighborhood look bad." I shook my head, hardly believing her stupidity. "You blocked my driveway, obstructed an emergency, just because you don't like my Ford F-550. You know what, Linda? I gave you a chance to move it when I called. You laughed in my face. Don't expect me to let it slide now." Linda's eyes widened, clinging to her last bit of arrogance. "I'll sue you for wrecking my truck," she threatened. I shrugged. "Go ahead, but I'll file against you for obstructing an emergency. And I've got cameras, witnesses, and my whole fire crew backing me. Good luck." Just then a cop, the one who'd written Linda up when my crew showed up, walked over, handing her a ticket. "Mrs. Harper," he said, voice flat, "you're fined for obstructing public traffic and endangering an emergency situation. You'll need to come to the station to sort this out." Linda snatched the paper from his hand, staring at it like she couldn't believe her eyes, then turned to me, her voice almost pleading. "You can't do this. I'm a decent citizen." I smiled faintly, saying, "Being decent doesn't mean you get to break the law, Linda. You brought this on yourself." The immediate consequences hit right in front of me. Neighbors started gathering, whispering to each other. Mr. Harrison, standing a few yards off, shouted, "I told her not to mess with Jake. Now look who's winning." Linda turned, her face going pale, clearly realizing she didn't have a single supporter left. Her arrogance melted away, replaced by panic as she saw the contempt in the eyes of people who'd once listened to her at HOA meetings. I didn't need to say more. The cops were doing their job, and I just stood there, watching Linda dig her own grave deeper. Before heading back inside, I gave Linda one last line. "You wanted my driveway clear. Well, it's clear now. But next time, don't try pulling this with me." She didn't reply, just stood there, clutching the ticket, watching me and the fire crew leave. She'd obstructed an emergency, nearly endangered the whole area, and I wasn't about to let her off easy with a few fake apologies. I decided to take this to court, not for money, but for justice. I filed a lawsuit against Linda for obstructing an emergency and causing emotional distress, not because I love courtrooms, but because I wanted her fully accountable. Before the trial, Linda tried reaching out through texts, her tone a far cry from the smug laugh she'd given me over the phone that night. "Jake, can we settle this quietly?" she wrote. "I don't want trouble." I read it, let out a dry laugh, and didn't reply. Quietly. She'd almost held up my fire crew during a major blaze, and now she wanted quietly. I pocketed my phone and got ready for court day. The trial happened at the local courthouse in Salem. I showed up with all my evidence. Security footage of Linda setting up the fence and parking her truck at midnight. The recorded call where I told her to move it. And statements from Mr. Harrison and my fire crew. Linda walked in wearing a neat dress, hair brushed, trying to play the decent citizen she'd claimed to be. But when the judge asked her to explain, her confidence crumbled fast. "I didn't know Mr. Miller was a fire chief," Linda started, voice trembling. "I just wanted him to put that fire truck away, because it made the neighborhood look bad. I didn't think it was an emergency. I just parked there for a bit." The judge, a middle-aged man with a stern gaze, cut in. "Mrs. Harper, Mr. Miller called and told you it was an emergency. You refused to move. What's your defense?" Linda blinked rapidly, flustered. "I thought he was exaggerating. I didn't mean any harm." I stood up, laying out my side. "Your Honor, I'm the fire chief of Salem. That night, I got a call to assist with a major fire at a lumber mill 5 miles from Pinewood Estates. Mrs. Harper blocked my driveway with her truck and a fence, refusing to move, despite my warning. My crew had to break through to get me out. If we'd been delayed, the consequences could have been far worse." I presented the video, and as it played on the screen, I saw Linda bow her head, hands gripping her chair tight. Harrison, called as a witness, stepped up and recounted. "I saw her put up the fence at midnight, and I heard her brag she'd teach Jake a lesson. She knew exactly what she was doing." Linda tried to argue back, voice shrill. "I didn't mean any harm. I'm an HOA member. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood nice." But the judge didn't budge. "Mrs. Harper," he said, "your intent doesn't matter. Your actions obstructed an emergency, and you had no right to interfere with someone else's property." The ruling came fast. Linda lost. She got slapped with a hefty fine for obstructing an emergency, had to pay me damages, including the cost to fix my driveway after the fire crew tore through, and got a court order banning her from coming near my house. I watched her as the judge read the verdict. Her face went pale, hands shaking. No trace left of the arrogance from the woman who'd laughed in my face over the phone. I didn't feel joy. I just felt satisfied that justice was served. The fallout didn't stop at court. Word spread through Pinewood Estates, and Linda lost all her credibility. The HOA held an emergency meeting a few days later, and she got stripped of her membership. No one wanted to be tied to someone who'd nearly endangered the whole neighborhood over a fire truck. Mr. Harrison told me folks now called her the driveway destroyer behind her back. Linda had turned herself into a laughingstock, and I didn't have to lift a finger. She did it to herself. After the trial, Linda Harper vanished from Pinewood Estates, not right away, but it didn't take long. She sold her house, left quietly. No goodbye party, no one to see her off. Mr. Harrison said she couldn't face anyone in the neighborhood anymore, and I wasn't surprised. Now my life's back to peaceful, and I've got a lesson from all this. My driveway's clearer than ever now. After the whole mess, I added more security cameras and a little sign out front. "Fire Chief Property. Do not block." Not because I'm worried someone will pull a Linda again. I just want to remind folks I'm not someone to mess with. My Ford F550's still there, red and gleaming, like a trophy from the win. I still head out every weekend, checking the engine, polishing the chrome, and enjoying the off days I always dreamed of when I moved here. No one dares touch it now, or at least no one's dumb enough to try. Sometimes I sit with Mr. Harrison over coffee, and we laugh about it like it's a funny story. He says, "I've never seen Linda shut up so fast as when your fire crew showed up. She thought she was the queen of the neighborhood, but you gave her a reality check." I nod, take a sip of coffee, and reply, "Some people need a fire crew tearing down a fence and a lawsuit to figure out they don't own the world." Mr. Harrison laughs hard, and so do I. That's how I wrap this up. Not with anger, but with satisfaction. Linda lost, and I didn't need to do more to prove it. She lost money, lost respect, and in the end, lost her place in Pinewood Estates. Me, I keep living like before, working when I need to, resting when I want, and keeping my fire truck safe in the driveway. If there's a lesson from all this, it's this: don't mess with a fire chief, especially when he's got a fire crew and the law on his side. Linda Harper learned that the hard way, and I get to live in peace, just like my original dream. The story of Jake Miller and Linda Harper in HOA. Linda blocked my driveway without shame, but she didn't know I was a fire chief. Reflects a very real slice of life in the US. Today, the tension in upscale suburban neighborhoods where homeowners associations, HOAs, and self-righteous folks often spark conflict. In America, places like Pinewood Estates aren't rare. Spots where community rules sometimes get twisted to push personal agendas, like how Linda griped about Jake's vintage fire truck for not fitting the aesthetics. This clash also mirrors a bigger issue: the disrespect for personal boundaries and the arrogance of some, like when Linda blocked Jake's driveway, not once, but twice, even during an emergency, like a fire. It's not unlike real-life cases in the US, where neighbor disputes escalate into lawsuits or official intervention. The lesson from this story that applies to real life in America is: respect others' boundaries and think hard before you act, because the fallout can go way beyond what you planned. Jake, as a fire chief, stayed cool and used proof security footage, Mr. Harrison's testimony, to take Linda to court, showing how crucial it is to stand your ground and lean on the legal system when needed. Linda, on the flip side, lost everything: fines, respect, her HOA spot, just because of her arrogance and lack of foresight. In American culture, where individual rights matter big time, you should steer clear of acting like Linda. Don't assume you can force your will on others without paying a price. Instead, take a page from Jake, be patient, gather evidence, and let the law handle it when push comes to shove. Life in modern America's full of stress, but as Jake proved, keeping a level head and doing things right gets you through, while folks like Linda just set themselves up to crash and burn. If you like the story of how I taught Linda a lesson she'll never forget when she blocked my driveway, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more wild tales like this, and thanks for joining me on this ride with my vintage fire truck. Catch you in the next video, where I'll share more funny run-ins from Pinewood Estates.